Okay, I've been watching a lot of these predictions videos and they look like a lot of fun, so I figured I'd get in on it myself. I want to do a prediction for UFC 86. First match, Tyson Griffin versus Marcus Aurelio. Tyson Griffin, well-rounded fighter. Great striking, great wrestling, great submissions, great stamina, excellent stamina. He's a guy who's going to keep the pace, and if you start slowing down, he's going to steamroll right over you. And of course, he's the only guy to have, at this point, to have beaten Uriah Faber, so that's a huge notch on his belt. What's interesting is Tyson Griffin, his only loss was a decision to Frank Edgar, and Marcus Aurelio, all of his losses were by decision. So we have two guys who have never been knocked out or submitted. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Of course, Marcus Aurelio, great jiu-jitsu. Most of his wins are by decision. This is a hard one to call. Tyson Griffin's going to want to keep it on the feet. But, if he goes to the ground, he's not going to be in extreme danger. But I think Tyson Griffin's a more well-rounded fighter, and I think he's gonna break this decision streak, and I think he's gonna get a third-round TKO. So Tyson Griffin, third-round TKO. Next up, Chris Lytle versus Josh Koscheck. What can you say here? Chris Lytle, of course, coming in as the veteran. A lot more experience than Josh Koscheck. Chris Lytle's his biggest downfall seems to be that he always loses the big ones. He lost to Carl Parisian, lost to Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, Robbie Lawler. He always seems to lose the big ones, and that seems to be his downfall. But yeah, he has great submissions. Josh Koscheck, great wrestling, improved striking. Since his Ultimate Fighter time, he's greatly improved his striking. But excellent wrestling. And out of his last 7 fights, he's only lost once, and that was to GSP, which is nothing to kick him in the butt about. So I think it's Josh Koscheck's time. I think he's going to take a decision. Next up, Joe Stevenson versus Gleison Tibau. This is an interesting fight because both fighters are coming off of losses. Of course, Joe Stevenson to BJ Penn, and Gleison Tibau lost to Tyson Griffin. And neither of these guys have lost 2 in a row. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Joe Stevenson, he's okay on his feet. Much like Josh Koscheck, he's improved his striking, since his Ultimate Fighter days. He's okay on his feet, but his strength is his wrestling and his submissions. He has some nasty submissions, great chokes. That's his thing, is a choke. Gleison Tibau, he's the better striker easily, and he has great jiu-jitsu, and most of his wins are by submission. So I think this is going to be a really technical ground game, because Joe Stevenson, his striking, he's improved it, but he generally will use it just to get you to the ground, like what we saw in the Melvin Gillard fight. He was able to get him down with the strike, and down to his world where he could submit him. So, I think this is just going to be a great ground game. I think Joe Stevenson is going to pull out the victory. We're going to see a great grappling match, but I'm going to say Joe Stevenson by decision. Next up, the classic striker versus grappler match. Patrick Cote versus Ricardo Almeida. It's going to be a great one. I think it's going to go back and forth. Of course, Cote's the better striker. Big puncher. He has 4 losses. 2 are by decision, and 2 are by rear naked choke submissions. So his vulnerability, of course, is the rear naked choke, which that's Ricardo Almeida's world. So he's going to be in danger when he gets to the ground. You know, if I were him, I'd be working at the pit with Chuck Liddell on my sprawl, because he's going to want to keep this on his feet as much as possible. Ricardo Almeida, great jiu-jitsu, much better on the ground. He has 2 losses, and you know, one of them is to Matt Lindland. First time he fought in the UFC, he was disqualified for fouls. Of course, he's coming off of what, 7 fight win streak now. I think it's his time. I think it's going to be a back and forth fight, but I think Almeida's going to pull out a submission, probably 2nd round maybe. So yeah, I'm going to go with Almeida 2nd round submission. Of course, the main event, Forrest Griffin versus Quentin Jackson. You know, I love an underdog, and I really like Forrest Griffin, and I'm going to be rooting for him, but I just don't think this is his time. Yeah, I think they're giving him this fight prematurely. They should give him a few more fights, you know, at least 1 or 2 more fights before throwing him into a title fight. So I just don't think it's his time. I think Rampage is way too dominant right now. Rampage, of course, better striker, better on the ground. I think overall Rampage just has a more well-rounded game in every aspect. You know, Forrest Griffin's, I guess his major attribute is that he can take an ass kicking and keep coming at you, and that's great because he's going to need it, because I think Rampage is really going to be laying it on him. I really want Forrest to win, but I just think they're throwing him in this way too soon. He's way over his head in this, and actually, you know, if you're into gambling, this might be a good one, because he's coming in as a huge underdog. I mean, the odds are really stacked against him. So, you know, if he wins, you'd be looking to make a lot of money. But I just don't think it's his time. This is Rampage's time. I don't see Rampage losing for quite a while. Of course, you know, and anyone who can throw a punch has a puncher's chance. So I'm not counting him out, and I'm rooting for him. But I just think that it's Rampage's time. Rampage is the better fighter all around in every aspect of the game, and also, you know, we've never seen Forrest go past 3 rounds. Rampage, of course, we just saw go 5 rounds with Dan Henderson. So you know, it's going to be interesting to see if Forrest makes it into the 4th and 5th round, what his stamina is going to be like, what his cardio is going to be like. I mean, I know he's known for having great stamina, but that's in 3-round fights. So you know, it's going to be interesting to see if he goes the extra 5 or 10 minutes, what happens. So yeah, I'm going to go with Rampage, probably 2nd round knockout. But those are my predictions. We'll see what happens.